Beneath the waves, where sunlight fades into eternal night, lies a world untouched by time and a secret that should have stayed buried. When marine biologist Nolan Carter and his team discover a sunken plane off the California coast, they uncover more than just wreckage. Inside the shattered cabin, they find evidence of something impossible: recent movement. A handprint in the silt, a barricaded cockpit, and a single chilling message. As Nolan's obsession deepens, he follows the trail into the abyss where missing ships and submarines litter the ocean floor like offerings. But the deeper he goes, the clearer the horrifying truth becomes. The drowned don't die. They change, and they've been waiting for him. Let us know where you are watching from and what time you found this video. We read every single comment and subscribe for more inspiring content. The seas off the coast of California are a deep blue, and the sunlight disappears into an unending abyss. A group of divers went into the unknown depths under the surface of the ocean. It was the intention of the expedition, which was led by marine researcher Nolan Carter, to investigate the thriving coral reefs that were found at these depths. But destiny had other expectations for them. As they proceeded farther into the water, the terrain around them began to change. The sounds of whales in the distance reverberated like eerie whispers as schools of silver fish moved quickly away from the area. Then, through the changing curtains of blue, something that was not quite natural emerged, a jagged silhouette that seemed completely out of place in this tranquil underwater environment. A jet that has sunk. The wings of the aircraft were fractured, as if they were the bones of an ancient leviathan, and the fuselage was partially submerged in the sea. The marks of a commercial airplane, which had disappeared from radar decades before, were still visible on the paint, despite the fact that it had faded. During the signal, Nolan's heart quickened, and he addressed his squad. This wasn't merely a whole ordeal. One of the wrecks had gone missing. As they reached the gaping maw of the aircraft's torn open interior, the divers approached it with careful kicks of their fins. In front of them, the black interior yawned like an open tomb that was being swallowed up by the sea. As the beam of Nolan's flashlight penetrated the darkness, it revealed rows of seats, some of which were still fastened in place, while others had been torn apart by the force of the hit. Then the inconceivable ensued. Just a handprint. It is fresh. Rather of being carved into algae or worn away by the passage of time, it has adhered to the layer of silt that covers an overhead chamber. The impression that someone or something had been inside not too long ago. It was as if Nolan's blood had frozen. That was not to be expected. The aircraft had been missing for more than 30 years at that point. There were no survivors. Not a single body was found. His radio made a crackling sound. The voice of Maya, one of his divers, could be heard coming from farther inside the wreckage. She spoke with a fearful tone in her voice. "Nolan, it is imperative that you see this." While swimming farther inside the vessel, Nolan saw Maya hanging close to the cockpit. Although the door was sealed shut, it was not damaged or corroded in any way. From the inside, it had been covered with barricades. The surface of the metal was scarred by deep and furious scratches, giving the impression that someone had made a valiant effort to claw their way out. In addition, a tiny, watertight container was found on the ground, partially submerged in the mud. Inside was a solitary notepad that had been soaked in water. Despite the fact that the pages were almost impossible to see, one line stuck out in the smeared ink. "They're still down here." A sound that rippled throughout the wreckage was a deep mechanical creak, and it occurred as Nolan was staring at the words. Within the cockpit, there was a sudden movement of something. There was a narrow escape for the divers. Upon returning to the surface, they recounted their discoveries while struggling to catch their breath. Nevertheless, no one believed them. According to the police, the fresh handprint was a trick of the light, and the notebook was interpreted as the ravings of a passenger who was about to be killed. However, Nolan was aware of it, mainly due to the fact that his light had caught movement in the smashed glass of the airplane when he finally turned to depart, watching as a face that is pale. And with a smile, Nolan sat in his study many weeks later, poring over the pages of the journal that had been decoded. It was the last entry that sent shivers down his spine. They informed us that there was no water in the ocean. That was not the case. It is not the collision that will destroy you. It is the thing that follows. It was that evening that Nolan got a phone call. There was yet another wreck that had been found. This time it was a submarine. Furthermore, the same word was etched on the hull of the vessel. They're still down here. To that end, Nolan made preparations to dive once again, despite his better judgment otherwise, because there are certain secrets that refuse to be hidden. Also, there are certain doors that should never be opened. Unable to shake the vision of that face in the cockpit, Nolan was unable to go on. The image of it, pallid and bloated from years spent in the depths, but undeniably alive, continued to haunt his nightmares. The most distressing aspect had been the eyes. Aware, yet not vacant or lifeless in any way. It was the finding of the submersible that altered everything. A nuclear submarine from the time of the Cold War, the USS Valkyrie, had disappeared in 1968. The official word is that it was a terrible accident. However, Nolan had a sneaking suspicion that the reality was far more dire. His squad dropped into the pitch-black darkness, the huge hull of the submarine towering over them like a mausoleum made of steel. In contrast to the aircraft, this accident displayed indications of purposeful sabotage via the fact that the hatch had been blasted out from the inside. From the inside, the hallways were a living nightmare. As if men had forced their way through the walls, they were showing signs of being clawed at. Not because of the passage of time, but because of something urgent, emergency lockers were ripped apart. And last, the logs of the crew. Except for one entry, which was strangely unaltered, the most of them were flooded beyond repair. Day 17. We can find them in the walls. The bulkheads were sealed, yet they still managed to find a way in. The captain has left. Much of engineering is the same way. You won't be killed by them. They just whisk you away. Then you return with an incorrect answer. The hands of Nolan were shaking. Same wording as before. The same terrifying feeling. After then, there was a sound. Deeper in the subfield, there is a sluggish and wet dragging sound. In response to the sound, Maya's light began to flicker. It seemed to be a dead body at first. The skin was waxy and stretched out, and it was covered with algae. But after that, it moved. To avoid swimming. Crawling is the word. Fingers that are excessively lengthy and joints that are excessively flexible. Its limbs bent in ways that shouldn't be conceivable. Also, its faces. No, there is no face. It's just anything that features one. The squad narrowly fled, but not before Nolan noticed more of them, shadows moving in the flooded compartments, observing. Their escape was narrowly successful. We are waiting. While Nolan was back on shore, he went over the declassified papers. There was no escape from the pattern. During the year 1945, a Navy pilot reported seeing men walking on the ocean floor before disappearing. After detecting unknown biological signals close to the trench in 1968, the Valkyrie vanishes without a trace. Flight 427 goes down in 1989 under strange circumstances. The transcripts from the air traffic control cite screams followed by stillness. And last, the aeroplane. It is the sub. There was something that was gathering wreckage. Nolan was aware that he needed to return. The members of his crew made their way back to the aircraft, armed with sonar scanners and deep-sea cameras. They discovered something new this time, which was a tunnel that was located under the wreck and led directly down, onward into the trench, off into the night. A variety of forms appeared on the sonar, a large number of them, moving forward, ascending. After then, the radio began to crackle with a voice that was not supposed to be there. "Nolan, come home. Could you hear Maya's voice?" 3 days earlier, Maya had passed away due to drowning. The last signal from Nolan's squad was scrambled and agitated, and it read as follows: "They're not dead. They're just changed the waters wrong here." Then there was complete quiet. The corpses of those individuals were never found. 6 months later, however, a fishing boat brought up a diving helmet that was in a shredded state. On the inside, there is a single note that was penned by Nolan. "They're waiting for you too, in addition, if you pay great attention throughout the night, close to the water's edge. They can be heard by you." Dialing in. The water has never been known to reveal its secrets. But at this point, it was speaking. A seasoned trawler skipper by the name of Elias Ruiz brought in a net that was so heavy that the winch moaned in protest. This achievement occurred 6 months after Nolan went missing. The crew of his vessel retreated in fear as the catch spilled over the deck. It is not fish. It is bones. Ribs, femurs, and skulls of human beings, all of which were picked clean and marked. It seemed as if something with razor-sharp claws had etched strange designs on the bone before it was discovered. In addition, a corroded flight recorder from Flight 427 was found entangled among them also. The sound was unbearable to listen to when it was played back. "They are inside the cabin. Mayday, mayday, must be called. They are not human, as stated in the static. I hear a wet, ripping sound, and then I say, God, they're in the walls. They are in the walls." After then, a fresh voice emerged. A guttural word. "It's not true. We are." Everywhere, to conduct the investigation, a marine microbiologist by the name of Dr. Lillian Voss was employed. Answers were essential for the government. All of the families want resolution. Lillian built a new team consisting of Kai Mendoza is a deep-sea remotely operated vehicle ROV pilot who has a talent for locating wrecks. A former Russian submariner named Dmitry Volkov, who claimed to have seen things in the Coral Trench. Sophie Carter is the younger sister of Nolan Carter. In that location, she was not meant to be. Even so, she showed up. They are tasked with discovering the tunnel. The submersible Abyss Hunter sank into the darkness, the captain said. Pressure was crushing at a height of 3,000 meters. It was around 4,000 that the sonar started to malfunction, displaying shapes that moved in opposition to the current. After that, they witnessed it. This is the tunnel. There is a gaping fissure on the ocean below, and its outside is surrounded by jagged rock, as well as debris. Not just submarines and airplanes. The vessels. Galleons from antiquity. Wee destroyers. All of them were pulled down and hollowed down. On his own, Dmitri made a cross. Not a trench. This is not. These are the nests. The lights of the ROV shone through the darkness. The walls of the tunnel were alive, and they pulsed with bioluminescent tendrils that seemed like veins to the naked eye. In addition, figures are clinging to them. They had a humanoid appearance, but their skin was stretched out and connected with bizarre chitinous growths. They had not passed away. They were progressing in some way. Lillian's breath abruptly stopped. Oh, my God. It is like a colony. They are adjusting to the new environment. After then, the feed from the ROV became static. In addition, the hull of the submersible was struck by something. Sophie made a desperate attempt to reach the communications. Nolan, unfortunately, it was not her brother who answered the phone. There were a lot of voices. With a childlike grin, "Sophie," we said, "we missed you." A lady weeping, "Join us." Nolan's voice, but incorrect. The water is at a comfortable temperature here. The metal of the submersible formed a grudge. In the open air, the animals moved closer together. After then, the lights suddenly went out. The abyss hunter was never seen again after that. A week later, however, a buoy located off the coast of Chile picked up a convoluted distress signal. A choir of voices, some of which are human and others of which are not, echoed only 3 words. "We are rising." These words are being read on your mobile device, on the laptop you're using. Do you happen to be close to a beach? It's possible that you're plotting a dive. Pay careful attention. The sea is quite enormous. Also, it is starving.